So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us today. We are going to talk about building a portal for secure data collection and reporting across municipalities. Myself, I'm Logan Guest. I'm our sales and marketing manager.
Working on it, sorry.
That's okay, no worries. I've been working at Extranet User Manager for 6.5 years now. Lots of experience working with different clients. I've had the opportunity to work with MBN and Megan, as well as lots of clients across multiple industries. From a Teams etiquette perspective, this is a normal Teams meeting, so feel free. Chat is open throughout the webinar. If you have questions, comments, feel free to chat anytime. I know Peter likes the open dialogue, so feel free to join into the conversation. You can ask on chat if you actually want to talk. And most importantly, I hope you enjoy the content and learn a thing or two.
Thanks, Logan. Peter Carson here. I'm going to be your main presenter, also President and Chief Audit Officer at Envision IT and Extranet User Manager, as well as being in Office Apps and Services, Microsoft MVP. So contact details are all in here. We're going to be sharing the deck after the session, so you'll have all that info. And we're recording, and we're going to provide that as well. And I'm going to pass it to Megan and mute my phone. Sorry.
Oh, you're on mute, Megan.
Thank you. I'm Megan Finley, Executive Director for the Municipal Benchmarking Network of Canada. We are involved in data collection and performance management for municipalities. We collect metrics from across 36 municipal service areas, and we've been working with Envision IT to build our new data portal, which is, I think, going to be showcased as part of today's demonstration.
Absolutely. Thanks, Megan.
Awesome. So from a timeline perspective, just to give everybody some context, you'll see Envision IT throughout here. Envision IT is really our parent company, very focused on Microsoft 365 consulting and services. Through those sorts of, lots of different engagements around extranets, we actually decided to go ahead and productize the Extranet User Manager brand. Some other key, pieces that I see, we just started supporting Microsoft 365 way back in 2014, almost 10 years now. And most, a really big step for us was to build on top of Azure AD B2B, allowing you to bring guest users into your tenant without having to license them. Obviously, you can see other points in the timeline. We've had multiple versions of the product launch, and everything that we're going to be talking about today with MBN is on our latest EUM version 6. From a customer perspective, lots of customers around the globe continuing to add to that on a monthly basis. Very fortunate to work in all different sorts of industries because, whether it be, municipal members, volunteers, clients, partners, any sort of large external sharing scenario, that's where our product tends to be implemented. So what I'll do now, I'll hand it over to Peter to go through the agenda and carry on with the rest of the presentation. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Logan. Yeah, so we've done the introduction side. We're going to step into a bit of an overview of MBNCanada, so I'll pass it over to you, Megan, on that point there, and then talk about the challenge that MBN was facing, how we helped them with that, and what the results were coming out of that. So we're going to do some slides, but then we're going to get heavy into demo and actually take you through what this looks like. How do we leverage Microsoft 365, Azure AD, and different tools from that point of view. So, Megan, why don't you take this one here? Give us a little overview on MBNCanada. Sorry, you're on mute there again.
No, I have to keep remembering to turn that on and off. As I mentioned before, Municipal Benchmarking Network of Canada has been around since about 2004. We support municipal performance management through collaboration, but also through a data collection process or benchmarking program, which means we collect metrics on over 700 service delivery measures across the 36 service areas, both external and internal, that municipalities collect. So we do generate an annual performance report, but the data warehouse is where municipalities have 365-day access to the data that is entered by municipal experts for those indicators. I think that's... So our issue was, again, since we've been around since 2004, obviously technology has changed, and the data warehouse that we used to have was hosted by a municipality. We had a third-party management group do the maintenance and hosting of this portal, but the data warehouse itself was somewhat antiquated. it was not user-friendly or intuitive. Generating reports took some time and skill, and we realized that we needed to modernize our portal to give users real-time access to data, the ability to generate Power BI dashboards, and to export and download data for local use. So we do have over 1,000 guest users right now on our data portal. And we invited Envision IT along with a number of other groups to propose solutions to our problems, and we chose to work with Envision IT, and we've been building this portal out since February of this year. And we're finally glad to say that we are at the very tail end of the full implementation. And I guess this is what we're going to showcase today. So again, it's really about an exercise to modernize the use, to make it more real-time, intuitive, and link with systems that municipalities are already using.
Cool. And then just a quick overview on your member municipalities, Megan.
Yes, so our municipalities change from time to time. We get new people on. We're looking at expansion strategies. COVID obviously was a big challenge for a lot of municipalities, so we were implementing at the same time. But we do have a number of municipalities in Ontario, but also across Canada.
Cool, thanks. So I want to give sort of a high-level view and step in at any moment if you feel the need, Megan, on the process that MBNCanada goes through, and this is what we're going to be showing through here. So, you know, Megan's literally in expert panel meetings right now. Sorry, I've got transitions turned on in here. It's just going to drive me nuts, so bear with me one sec. Megan, yeah, maybe if you want to talk to this one, because I'm not great at multitasking here.
Yes, so we do collect data all, the data warehouse is available to our municipal partners all year long, but we do have what we call our annual data call cycle. And so what we do is we work with our municipalities to confirm the metrics that they want to collect for the upcoming year. So we do this starting in November through to February. We'll be finalizing those metrics in this series of meetings that we're having throughout the month of February. And then we update our data portal to make sure that the metrics, the definitions, the parameters, they're all updated to reflect the approved metrics. And then we open that data for data entry for in May. We'll open that for all our municipalities to enter their data throughout May, June, and July. In August, we do data analysis, a review of the data with our municipal experts to make sure that everyone has completed the data. There are no anomalies, there isn't any missing data, there aren't any concerns. We generate sort of the draft report in September and send that out to all of our municipal partners to get their feedback, to provide narrative to their results. And then we publish an annual report in October. Up to date, since till now, we've been generating a printed report. As we move with the new portal, we're going to be looking at creating a link to a publicly accessible portal. But obviously the municipalities have access to that portal 365 days a year.
Cool, thank you. I managed to hopefully fix the PowerPoint so we don't have auto advance going on there. And I just wanted to make the point for those joining in. I mean, it's the presentation is very specific to what we've done with MBNCanada, and obviously, you know, has a municipal focus to it. But I want to make sure people keep their mind open and think about this from a broader. I need to collect data and present data back to a set of stakeholders. And that doesn't have to be municipal organizations. It could be any type of, you know, we see it a lot in associations where they have memberships that they collect from. Even, you know, we have one client in the publicly traded markets where they have a lot of subsidiaries they need to collect financial information from on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. So the same model that we've created here, even though we're going deep on the MBN type of solution, actually applies to a lot of different businesses and a lot of different verticals from that perspective. Okay, so, you know, moving forward into the challenges. So Megan, you already mentioned, you know, previously the data warehouse was hosted by one of your member municipalities. It was built back in 2004. Obviously, it was starting to show its age from that point of view. So, you know, needed to move away, not just from the aging application, but actually moving to cloud and moving off of on-premises infrastructure was one of the goals there. You know, and that there was a lot of manual effort, particularly on your part. You know, you had the unenviable task of manually generating that report, and we'll show the report in a minute. It's not small, it's not trivial. There's a lot of work involved in building that out. So trying to automate as much of that as possible through that. Obviously, not all of this ends up in the publicly published report. There's a lot of the measures that are actually private to the association and its members and the board. So security is paramount from that point of view. In fact, even within the membership, just by being a member and being able to enter and view reports doesn't mean you see everything. There's certain service areas and certain measures that are fairly private and critical from a privacy point of view that not even all the members get to see from that point of view. So managing that security model was a big part of the challenge as well. And then
Peter, if I might just expand on that too, as I said, because of there's 36 service areas, it really was important that access to the data would be limited to the designated access to participate in each of those service areas. So it's a really complicated security matrix in terms of allowing users to have access to the appropriate data.
Yeah, and other than the municipal leads that kind of manage all of the people on their municipality, the other users generally don't have carte blanche access. They have sort of select service areas that they have access into is the norm rather than the exception from that point of view. So yeah, there was a fair bit of complexity there, and delegation and making it easy for each municipality to manage that themselves was important from that point of view. And then just simple access to the shared data warehouse itself, the ability to actually connect in and get the raw data as well as the reports. And, we're still at early days from that point of view. Can member municipalities actually connect their own Power BI into the models that have been created within MBNCanada? We haven't gone that far yet, but that's sort of part of the larger roadmap from that point of view. So from a project objective point of view, obviously single sign-on and a single place to go to is important here, not just for this data collection, but Megan, you were mentioning you're in the thick of panel meetings right now. There's a lot of different panels. There's one for every service area. There's some additional committees, and there's the actual board itself. So there's a lot of coordination around that. And having all that come into one single portal, whether it was from a data entry, a report visualization, or from a committee management point of view, was super important. In fact, the webinar that we did 2 weeks ago with you, we talked about the boards and committees organization part of it. So if you didn't catch that webinar, by all means, check back in our events on the UM site to have a look at the recording for that one. Simple and easy is, seems like a simple task to aim for from an objective point of view. It's actually not. Taking something that's complex and making it simple is actually a hard thing to do. And I think we've achieved a lot of that to say, hey, let's strip away a lot of the complexity, because a lot of the challenges that we have that we find our clients face with Microsoft 365 is, yes, it's incredibly powerful. It's got all these features, but that can be overwhelming. There's just so much there. So how do we trim that back and say, okay, we just want you to do this one thing. Let's remove all that other confusion and make it easy for you to zero in on what you want to do there. And then the third piece, the delegation, this was super important as well. Megan, you probably don't know all 1,000 people that participate in the program personally. You know a lot of them, a lot of these people, but nevertheless, having you or your colleague Patty be responsible for managing that is just not scalable. So how do we delegate that down to each municipality and let them manage who are the people from their organization and what rights should they have as part of that was a key part of the objectives there. And then the fourth one, I know you'll call me out on this if I don't say it, we didn't get there, but we got a good start on it, which is taking that onerous task of generating that annual report and how do we automate some of that. And we'll talk about some of the challenges and where we still have some things left to do on that side for next October. I mean, we started this project in February of 2022, so we're almost at the 1-year mark here. We like to say it's not ideal, but we basically built the plane as we were flying. So, we were in flight and panel meetings were happening and then data collection was happening. We were kind of trying to stay one step ahead all the way through the process. And that's a bit of a tough way to run a project, but it was the reality of where we were from a timing point of view. Now we're, sort of at the end of that, take a breath and say, okay, let's clean up the things from last year and get those last missing pieces in there from that point of view. So the portal itself, we're going to jump into the demo side of the portal shortly here, but just to give you sort of a high level view of what does this portal look like. The data dictionary is a big part of the intellectual property of MBNCanada, and a lot of care and feeding has gone into defining across these 36 service areas with these 700 performance measures, what are they and what do they represent? How do you define them? How do you measure them? Because you need consistency. If you're going to compare municipality to municipality, it's got to be apples to apples, that they're actually collecting the same number so that they are relevant to each other from that point of view. So being able to define all that, document all that as part of the data dictionary is actually part of the portal itself. And then, of course, there's the municipalities. Each municipality has their own site collection in SharePoint. We hide a lot of that complexity, but things like the security matrix, we'll show you in a minute, is where the municipal leads go to decide who has what role within their organization. And there could be 100 plus people from a single municipality that municipal lead is managing through that process across 36 plus different service areas and committees and such. There's a lot of decision points there. How do we make that easy for them to do? And then there's the actual data Excels themselves. We decided, rather than building bespoke web forms to collect this data, can we leverage out of the box? So we'll show you those Excels and how we managed to leverage the power of Excels and formulas and protecting sheets and things to actually make a really simple to use data entry that actually gives them a lot of feedback as they're doing the data entry, but we can get that data easily into the data warehouse itself as well. The expert panels, the committees, we talked about them in the previous webinar, so we won't dive into those ones in this one here, but the data warehouse, of course, is the end goal here. We've got all this data that's collected from these member municipalities. How do we pull that all together, and what does that look like? So I'm going to come back. Sorry,
just
go ahead.
Before you go into the security matrix, I think it's just important to note that it's not just access to the service area, it's level of access within. So each of the users had to be given different accesses to whether or not they participated on the panels, whether they actually enter data, whether they just want to read the information. So again, it's a multi-leveled complexity.
It's like a three-dimensional matrix, yeah, of people, service area, and role, absolutely. So here, let's jump over. So we're going to use the development site for the portal, not the live production one, because we don't want to share real people's names and such from a privacy point of view. But you could go to portal.mbncanada.ca. You'll see a very similar page to this. You can't really get anywhere past this because it is a private invitation-only portal. A lot of portals we build have self-registration and an ability to be discovered. That's not the case here. The municipal leads at each municipality know the people in their organization that are going to be in here, and they invite them in, and that's how the access happens from that point of view. I need to start out in an administrator account, but I've got an in-private window that I'm going to share from a non-municipal lead regular user perspective as well, just to give you a sense of what that looks like. And it's important to note, that login that I'm doing, it didn't come up with a password because I was already logged in my browser to Microsoft 365, and that's the key. All these member municipalities actually use Microsoft 365 themselves. So when they are coming in, they're using their own organizational municipal credentials to come into the site. So the whole, hey, we need to manage credentials and forgot my password, stuff like that, none of that exists here because it's actually back on their member municipality credentials. And we can leverage all the security that those municipalities are doing as part of that as well. So let's actually start in the data dictionary side. So as I mentioned, this is kind of the core IP of MBNCanada. A lot of work has gone through. We can see the 36 different service areas here, and we can drill into individual ones easily from there. I can come down, say, into bylaw enforcement, and I can see some high-level information about that service area. And then I can see the individual measures. So these are a subset of the 700 measures that belong to that particular area from that perspective. And Megan, you can actually come in and edit this content yourself here. I'm actually signed in as an administrator as well. So I can actually edit this page and say, hey, I want to get into the page metadata that defines what is this service, whether it's objectives, influencing factors and such. You'll actually see more information here than you see on the page. And the reason that we did that is that we wanted to make this the system of record for the data dictionary. So as we start to automate the generation of the report, it's got a lot of this information in the report as well. It serves both purposes. It appears here in the portal, and it's used for publishing that report out from that perspective. I don't want to mess with any of this here. I'm just going to discard my changes, but that's at the service area level. And then we can start to see some of the reporting coming in. I can click into this PDF or Excel link here and actually see, it's called a paginated report. It's a style of Power BI report that dumps out all the data dictionary information on this particular service area. So if somebody needs, a full printed report of what the definitions are for this service area, they can pull this report out from there. They can also get it in Excel format, if they actually want to manipulate it from an Excel point of view, or maybe they want to bring it into something else from that perspective. The data is all there and it's all available to them. These appear like static files on the portal, but we actually dynamically generate them each night. So as Megan or Patty makes changes to the data dictionary definitions, these reports automatically get updated and refreshed from there. And this is a theme that we like to see in all of our projects. I call it single version of the truth, that this is the system of record for the data dictionary, and it flows out into the reports, into the printed annual report, but it all comes down to what's actually entered in here. And then if I want to, I can actually drill down into deeper measures here, and you can see there's actually metadata about the measures in terms of, when was it first created, classifications, does it appear in a panel? Is it publicly reportable? Does it go into that public report that gets published on the public MBNCanada website? And this one's pretty straightforward. The population count per 100,000 and the number of dog types through the year. So this is a pretty simple one to count. Some of them get a lot more complex from that point of view. And it's where we can see some of the live reporting coming in. I can click on this Power BI icon here, and it'll actually take me into a Power BI dashboard specific to this particular measure. Now I can look much broader, and we'll show you that in a minute as well. Let me actually pop this out into full screen. And we can see those numbers across the different municipalities. And right now, we're just looking at the 3 most recent years, but we actually imported where we had the data for measures all the way back to 2004. Not every measure has been collected for all time for MBNCanada, because the measures get reviewed and evaluated as part of that annual process, and they may add additional measures, redefine measures, or remove measures as appropriate through there. And you can see the median as well as the trends across different municipalities, both in chart form and in data form. And you can always pull this data down as well. You can say, hey, I just want to export this data out, but maybe I want to get a few more years in here as well, and pull that data. And as long as you have access to this data, so as Megan said, not everybody has access to all service areas. That's defined in the security matrix that we'll talk about in a minute through there. This is using what's called row-level security in Power BI. So Power BI knows who's logged in and what they're allowed to see based on that security matrix that we'll see, and we'll see different measures and different things come in as part of that. So let's flip down into the actual reports section now. So I was looking at a report for a single measure. I can actually pull up a full report here as well that allows me to pick through all the different measures that are available in the system. And remember, right now I'm signed in as the administrator that has access to everything. So I see, all of the service areas available to me through here, and I can pick up different measures through there and show them from there. So I can come back to that bylaw section, look at the different measures in there, tag through those, pull that data out from there as well. I can apply different filters. I can look at just particular municipalities if I want to. I've got that same sort of power, but now it's showing me everything that I have access to from that perspective. Now let's flip over actually to the live MBNCanada website for a second. So anybody can go here. This is publicly available, and I can click this download link to see the actual performance measure report. So this is what, Megan, you spent a lot of time, August, September, October, working on the creation of this report. You can see it's a 266-page report. It's not a trivial report. If we start at the beginning, there's sort of some opening cover page information, the board of directors, the table of contents and such through there. And then as we come down a little further in, we'll get into the actual service area. So this is kind of explaining the concept. And we can see here actually that not all municipalities even report on all service areas. So if you've got a dark gray box in there, that means that that particular municipality doesn't report on that service area. Some report on, or some service areas are reported on by all of them, but not across the board from that perspective. And there's some high level municipal data. What's the population? What are the total budgets and expenses and such? These actually become important denominators in a lot of the calculations, because if we get into per capita, obviously we need to know the population numbers of each of those municipalities in order to be able to bring them in as part of that. And then we get into the individual service areas, and we've got description around the service area. And as I was mentioning before, we defined this content here back in the data dictionary when I was in the portal. And the idea is to be able to push that content out into this printed report from that perspective, and then be able to drill down into the individual measures that are marked as publicly reportable and actually generate the charts that we have on here. Now, one of the big challenges that we had is, there's a very specific format that Megan and MBNCanada in general were looking for, where this table at the bottom here aligns with the chart view up above. And I'll show you when we go back to the generated report. Out of the box Power BI, that's difficult because they're actually two different visualizations and they don't necessarily line up properly from there. There is the ability in Power BI to create what's called custom visualization. So we engaged an external consultant to help us with that, kind of scoped out what was involved. It was going to take too long for this report generation last October, but it's something we'd like to do for the next pass through. Because Megan, you literally had to take all of this data and generate Excel charts and tables for each one of them manually, which is a big effort to have to go through. We've got all the data there. With a little bit of custom visualization, we can get this chart and table exactly the way that you want it, with the right median line, with the right tables aligned underneath and everything else. Then we just crank it out and away it goes from there, and save a tremendous amount of effort from that point of view. So the report itself kind of goes through that structure to say, there's some intro verbiage, there's the main chart, that's the money shot for that particular measure. And then there may be exceptions and details that particular municipalities may explain, why are we different than somebody else? What was going on that particular number? Why did it change from the previous year through that? So collecting that is actually part of the data collection process as well. So now if we come back to the portal itself, let's go back to the members view and jump into Sudbury for a minute here. Actually, I should take a step back here for a second. So again, because I'm logged in as an administrator, I'm seeing all the municipalities. Normally, I would belong to one of those municipalities, and I would only see my municipality in there. I'm just picking Sudbury as a random one through here. These are all made up people because it's our development environment, but normally these would be all of the people that belong to the program from Sudbury. And there's a key person or people at Sudbury that are called the municipal leads, and they're the ones that are responsible for managing all the people that are in here. Now, the data entry happens through Excel, as I mentioned, but before that can happen, we need to invite all these people in. So one of the data entry Excels, we call the security matrix, is actually the place where that happens. So imagine I'm the municipal lead for Sudbury. I've come in here, I've clicked on the security matrix for Sudbury. I'm now into out of the box Excel Online. So this is a regular Excel workbook that happens to be stored in the MBNCanada SharePoint tenant. And I'm using Excel Online in the browser to access that. And as a municipal lead, what I need to do is define who all these people are. So I just start banging more names and email addresses in here if I want to invite more people, or I literally delete a row out here if that person shouldn't have access anymore. And then that three-dimensional matrix that Megan and I were talking about is basically the columns that we have here represent the 36 different service areas, plus a couple more like the board of directors, and there's a couple committees above and beyond the service areas. And then these cells here have different codes in them indicating what that particular user has access to that particular service area. So am I a municipal lead? So in this example, we can see, there's actually about 8 or 10 people set up as municipal lead for Sudbury in development. I don't know, Megan, is that typical, or is it usually sort of 1 or 2 people per municipality that are municipal
It's generally leads? 1 to 2 that have access to everything.
Okay. So the question from Nathan there is this matrix managed by HR? It's actually managed by those 1 or 2 people that have that municipal lead role, but they're people that, their day job is working for the city of Sudbury. It's not working for MBNCanada, but they've been given this task as part of their job role at Sudbury to say, hey, you are the lead on this program. And it's up to you to figure out who belongs to which service area and what role they have in there. And by simply putting names and emails and filling in the columns here, they define those roles. So if we look at the second one, the municipal data, I mean, that tends to be a fairly restricted set as well, because that's that top level, what's our population and what was our total revenue budget kind of information. So it's typically the municipal lead that manages that as well. But then as we get into the individual, we were looking at bylaw previously, we can see this user one person has an R in the bylaw column. What that means is they have read-only access to the bylaw data. They can look at the Excel, they can see the Power BI reports for that, but they can't change anything in there. So if the cell is blank, it means that person doesn't have any access to that particular service area. So this particular user just has these 3 service areas. So they have read-only access to bylaw. They have the ability to edit building permits. So they're responsible for actually entering the data in. And for accounts payable, they're actually the primary board member is what the P stands for. There's a key that gives the guidance as to what these different roles are. What that means is not only do they edit the accounts payable data, but they are the main member of the expert panel for accounts payable. So when the group across municipalities gets together to say, hey, are we collecting the right stuff for accounts payable? Do we need to tweak anything? It's that person that represents Sudbury on that panel. Now there be general panel members, which is kind of the same thing, except they're not sort of the point of contact, but they still belong to that panel. So that's sort of
Peter, if I might just there too, is what we wanted to do with this as well is that there is a collaborative component to what we do in terms of knowledge exchange and networking, and those people are part of the panels. So not everybody who enters data is someone who actually wants to do knowledge exchange. So that's a kind of a further designation there that you can go in and you have access to the data, but you're not going to get invited to these knowledge exchange meetings in the collaboration portal. So there are little differences there too as well.
And that's a really important point to make is, a big part of the reason for the existence of MBNCanada isn't to collect this data, but to use this data. So, as these panels are meeting, they're not just discussing are we measuring the right things, it's also who's doing awesome and why, and how can we learn from that and collectively do better as a group of municipalities across Canada. I mean, that's the end game here, right, Megan?
Yes.
Cool. So actually, if I come back to the deck for a minute, so we've got an example flow of that flow. So, we've got a municipal lead that would initially get invited by Megan or Patty, who are running MBNCanada. That would give that municipal lead access to their municipal site, like the Sudbury one that we were just looking at. Now that person from Sudbury can come in and edit the security matrix and add in however many people they need through there. And as soon as they add them, we have a process I'll talk about in a minute that brings those Excels in and figures out who's new, who's removed, updates all the permissions and such based on that. And it'll send out invitation emails to those new people to say, hey, you've just been invited into the MBNCanada portal. Use your regular email address. You don't need to know a password. It's your organizational credentials, and away you go from there. And that process also defines who belongs to those expert panels and committees. So the stuff we talked about 2 weeks ago is all driven through this same process as well. So if I come back to my browser here, actually, let me flip over. So here, I don't know if my login is timed out yet or not. Let me just refresh my page and see what happens. Oh, that looks good. So I'm logged in as a test user from Waterloo. So if I come over to my members side here, you'll see that I just see Waterloo because that's the only municipality I belong to, and I'm only part of the accounts payable expert panel. So there's a very limited view of what I see from there. If I go in to view this group, my data entry Excels, again, it's not the big long list, it's a much shorter list because I only have certain columns filled in on my security matrix. In fact, I'm not a municipal lead, so I don't even see the security matrix. I can't change that. I would have to contact, who's the main contact at Waterloo in this case to say, hey, I need another service area. You can update the security matrix and allow me in from there. And if I was to go to the reports and bring up that exact same report that we were looking at earlier, I'll see a different view of that because I only see those service areas that I have access to. So the report knows who I am, where my information is from a security matrix point of view and pulls all that together for me. So if I come back into this group here, actually, let me use the other browser session here. I'm going to stick with the bylaw theme for now. So these data entry Excels, we went into the security matrix one. There's one for every service area as well for each municipality. It's basically how we collect the data from them. So again, I'm into Excel Online. I'm in the bylaw enforcement 2021, but it's actually part of the Sudbury site collection. So this Excel is unique just to Sudbury, and there's one for each municipality that collects data for this service area. And you can see most of the Excel is grayed out, and we've protected it. So if I click into one of these cells and try and type, it says, hey, sorry, this sheet is protected, and those cells you're trying to work with are read-only, because we don't want people breaking the Excel. We don't want them entering stuff where they shouldn't. Basically, the white boxes are the only spots where they should enter data in from that point of view. And because this is dev, we don't have data already preloaded in here. Normally, the municipal lead would have filled in the population number. And if I look at that value, it actually points to another Sudbury Excel, which is the municipal data Excel as part of that, to say, go get that data from that other Excel. In the bylaw scenario, they can actually override that number to say, hey, let's say I just want to make it the same as last year and drop that number in. Because that's a white cell, I can actually do my data entry. And you can see that the denominator just lit up on a bunch of things here, because those have calculations in them that says, hey, go use either the population or the override population divided by 100,000, and that's my denominator for this. So if I come in here and say, hey, I've got 2,000 dog registrations, what does that number become? It divides it by the 1.6 population number, and there's a result from there. And it shows me what was the result previous year. So if we've got something that's wildly different from a previous year, we should be asking the question to say, hey, is this the right number? Did I actually get the wrong thing? Or is last year's number wrong? Because there is a data restatement process to say, hey, we're going to be collecting for 2022 when we get into the spring, summer of 2023 this year. But you may find through this process that we actually put something wrong in for 2021 or 2020. And there's actually a separate Excel and process to manage that, to say, hey, can we restate that number and update that? Even though it was published in a previous, you can actually call that out. So you would actually put comments in here, if you said, hey, we need to restate this one, that's why it's showing this, or this is as expected for this reason. Ultimately the comments that get entered in here get reviewed by Megan and potentially included in that public report that we were showing to kind of justify and explain the numbers from there. The other piece that we wanted to capture is that people quite likely are going to change from year to year. Staff come and go at municipalities, job roles change and such from that point of view. So let's make this a note-taking place where people can actually note down and say, well, I went into this screen in SAP to find this number, and this is where we keep it at Sudbury in this case here, to make it easy to be able to track down and for the person that's doing the next year, not have to go back to first principles and figure all that out. So that's something that's going to get collected over time and populated out from there. And there's a whole start of year process where we basically take all these Excel templates and get them populated with the previous year values, kind of get all the the comments cleared out, but retain the municipal data source notes from the previous year, so it's all there and ready when May comes to begin that process. And we may have the same thing this year as we had last year, Megan, where this wasn't necessarily 100%. The panels were still meeting. They tweaked some of the what should be in and what should be out from a measure point of view. And we actually had a process where in flight, even though municipal staff were editing these Excels, we could actually slide in a new template that changed what the measures were and such through there. And we had a process that captured the data that already had entered. So they didn't have to start over. It retained that, but gave them a new template from there. Because you have to think about, 36 Excels per municipality times 13 municipalities, that's 400 or 500 different Excel files. You don't want to have to manually go and put changes across all of those if things have changed from there. You need automation and consistent processes around that. So that was a big part of it as well. So
Peter, if I might on this one as well, I don't know if you were going to show that, but not all municipalities provide service for every one of those indicators. So they do have the ability to disable the metrics that they don't collect.
Right. So it's not just at the service area level, it may be at the measure level as well to say, yes, we collect by law, but this particular measure doesn't apply to us and we're not going to be collecting it. That's an important point as we get to the completion reports as well, because we can actually see, as the data call is progressing, where are folks at in terms of entering the data in and how are they progressing along from that. So if I come back to my reports here, and again, this is available to everybody, only the service areas that they have access to, they can actually see themselves how they're trending and tracking from that point of view. So I come back to this same report here, and I come over to the completion tab. I can pick a particular municipality and say, hey, I'm just interested in Sudbury, for example. I want to filter this down and see how complete am I across those measures. This is all dev data, but ideally, you want to see people get to 100% from there. And as Megan mentioned, if a service area is excluded or a particular measure is excluded, we want to factor that into this here so it doesn't show them as incomplete when they in fact are, because they don't collect particular numbers as part of that. And this is something, Megan, I'm assuming you would use to kind of see overall, how's everybody doing? Are we going to make our targets of when we're going to lock numbers and close things off? But it's also important for the municipal leads to herd the cats and say, hey, this particular service area, you folks haven't got your data in there, get on it. We need to get that information in. The data call closes on this date, because there is a hard fixed date, because you have to start the report generation to say, hey, we're closed. Even if you're not done, we can't take more from there.
And this report allows us to identify the specific measures for which the data has yet to be entered too. So that's
you can get right down into the individual detail. Absolutely. Cool. So if we come back to the slide deck here, this is sort of a high level view of what's happening under the hood around all this. So we looked at the security matrix, we looked at the data entry Excels. There's a couple others that we didn't touch on. This municipal service areas Excel is actually the one that Megan was referring to that defines, what service areas does each municipality collect from. And the data restatements is for those prior year restatements that we want to capture and bring into the data warehouse. That gets entered just by you, Megan, and Patty, I guess, from a central point of view. We've talked about having a forms or some self-service around that part of it as well. But ultimately, all of this is feeding into a data import process and coming into a data warehouse that we keep in an Azure SQL database. And ultimately, that's what's feeding those Power BI reports that we've been looking at that get exposed up through the portal. Now, all that historical data, all the pre-2021 data, we were actually able to pull the SQL database from that, transform that, and bring it into the Azure SQL database. So this is not a live connection. That was sort of a one-time thing we did as we launched the data warehouse out last year to capture that data and bring it into the new data warehouse. So when we come into Power BI, we can see that history all the way back to 2004 where appropriate.
Peter, just one point, if I might. I think the importance of having all of this crafted this way is because from our perspective, the owners of the data are the municipalities. It's not MBNCanada.
Right.
So there needs to be controls that the municipality has at a local level to control the data that's being entered, the data that's being reported, and that's why we had to separate their role from the program administration role.
And one other point from a technical point of view, the security matrix becomes part of the data warehouse itself, but it also feeds into this process here. So this processing of the security matrix is one and the same, this process here. It was two independent processes when we first built it. We've actually collapsed it together into a single one from there, just to simplify the architecture from that point of view. Now, there are a few additional reports that you don't see through the portal itself, the primary one being the actual performance report that gets generated for publication itself. So that's actually available through the Power BI service. So the portal users don't have access in here, but Megan and Patty do because they belong to the MBNCanada Microsoft 365. So if I come down to this performance report here, again, it's what we call a paginated report. It's intended to be built out for publication purposes. So I'll just do it for a single service area. It takes quite a while to generate the entire report out from there. And that same structure that we saw in that publicly published PDF is what we're aiming to create through here. So you could literally just say go once the data is ready, generate that PDF and publish it up on the website. And as Megan mentioned, maybe it's going away from that, structured PDF printed type of format to more of a, I don't know if that's going, to more of an interactive type of experience. And there's the ability to say, hey, let's light up this data through Power BI even to the public. We can actually publish a Power BI report anonymously. Microsoft will host that for free for you. You don't actually have to pay anybody for that, and allow them to interact with the data itself. Obviously, you'd want it restricted to just the publicly reportable measures, but that would work quite well too. So I can come through this, and that opening page that we had in there, the background on the service area, all the stuff that we were seeing in the data dictionary is actually getting pulled into this report as part of this. And then we get into the individual measures. And you can see here, this one's actually not bad. I mean, the goal was to have the individual municipalities line up between these two tables. And it depends on the report format how successful that'll be, because you actually can't control those as two separate. You can see here there's a bit of a misalignment there. So if we had that as one custom visual that we built, we could explicitly control exactly what that looks like and have it picture perfect from a publication point of view. So we didn't get a chance to do that for the October publication. We'll have to come back to this for this year's report generation. So I think that's actually most of the walkthrough. Megan, is there spots that I didn't touch on you think we should go back to cover?
No, I think you've pretty much touched on everything there.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So we do have additional slides in the deck that kind of show screenshots of those different spots. I don't think we need to go through that. Let me just jump right ahead to the wrap-up points, sort of learnings that we got coming out of this. MBNCanada already had a Microsoft 365 tenant before we started this project. So it's really, you've already made that investment in 365. How do we build on that? That's really a big part of it. Second piece, and again, don't just think about collecting municipal data. You've got a structured data collection that you need to do. Excel is actually a really good way to do that. And we found that Excel Online was an even better way of doing it. Because if I come back to the portal and I jump into one of those Excels, there was no need for them to worry about, do they have a local copy of Excel installed? Is it the right version? Is it going to work properly? Just work in the browser. It's super simple. Excuse me. And because this is in SharePoint Online, all the co-authoring just comes for free as part of this. You could literally have multiple people from one municipality for one service area, working on different Excel cells in the same Excel. They'll actually see each other's changes in there. You'll see additional people light up in here if you've got multiple people in it. So all this power of complex calculations and protecting sheets and designing your data input form and allowing multiple people simultaneously to do data input, we didn't have to build anything for that. That's just out of the box Excel. Microsoft does an awesome job at that kind of stuff. The make it simple is our goal. Is how do we layer that on top from that point of view? And Power BI, if we come back to the diagram for a second here, I mean, yes, we have a SQL data warehouse prior because we're doing all this complex data collection. You can point Power BI right at the source data sets. We found with the complexity that we were doing and the other processing we were doing, it was better to have our own data import process. But Power BI actually works really well for collecting the data, and obviously works very well from a presentation point of view. You can do a lot of things with visualizations from that point of view. Extranet User Manager, our product, shameless plug, it's about making it easy. Make it simple to get into the portal and get the specific things that you need to do from that point of view. Delegation is super important. Let the municipal leads manage their information from that point of view. But at the end of the day, don't forget about security. There's a massive investment that Microsoft makes, so in excess of $1 billion a year just on security into their cloud products. And you get to get all that for free as part of what you already pay for your Microsoft 365 subscription. You know, we got some deep inquiries from a number of the municipalities saying, hey, we want to understand your security model and your password policies and all this. And we're like, it's yours. It's what you do in your Microsoft 365, and all the sophistication and protection that Microsoft gives you just comes along as part of that. So it's awesome from that point of view. If you want to try some of this out, we have a couple of Power BI dashboards up in our EOM demo tenant. So you can actually go to, I don't have the link in here. We should drop that in. So portal.eomdemo.com is the URL that you would go to. You can actually sign up, register your own account, explore different use case scenarios. If you go into the dashboards and analytics, it'll let you play around with Power BI and get a quick sense of what that looks like. We don't have any of the MBN stuff in there, but that's all there from a core Power BI perspective. Oh, actually, we do have it here, just a little further on. So in the next steps, yes, we've got the webinar recording, and the deck is going to go up shortly on our site after the event. We will be sending out a poll. Logan, have you sent that out already, or?
Yes, yeah, I sent it to 12:46. It should be in the chat for everyone. We can also put it in the follow-up email as well.
Yeah, so we'd love to get your feedback from the session. You know, what you liked about it, what you didn't. You know, is there ideas for future from that point of view? We always love to hear about that from that point of view. You know, absolutely try out the test ride if you want to go deeper from that, and if you want actual time to discuss your particular scenario, just click the link here. You'll get into Logan and Irina's bookings and be able to see available calendar slots from there. So Logan, I saw a few chats flash by, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to the chat. Was there questions that we missed as we went through there?
No, I think you covered everything as we went along, which is great. Okay.
Megan, any closing thoughts, comments you want to share with the group?
No, it's been an interesting experience for us. I mean, I can say that from a satisfaction standpoint in terms of the security applications, the ease of use, the accessibility, the look and feel, that the feedback that we have from our municipal users so far has been quite positive with the change. We're obviously still finishing up the final touches, and as Peter mentioned, we're looking at a much more public portal interactive approach to the reporting piece for this year. But it has definitely been a major improvement on the old system. So as far as the barriers and challenges, I think that we're very happy that we've addressed a lot of the project objectives that we had hoped to meet at the beginning of this.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join with us, and tune in next time for next webinars from there. We'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.